I have watched you breathe as if the air itself were being rationed, as if the next breath had to be earned before it was allowed to arrive. Not the quick breath of a hard climb, not the caught breath before news you were afraid to open, not the slow breath you take on purpose to steady yourself. The thin, careful pull of someone who has been on guard so long that they have forgotten air was ever meant to come easy. Right now, as these words reach you, I am moving over the place in you that went still. And before these words are finished, I want my own word to become the fuller air you have been living without. Come closer than the shallow rationing has been letting you come. There's a question sitting underneath everything you feel. A question you have not let yourself ask out loud because you were afraid of the answer. And before I am done here, I am going to answer it plainly, with a line I wrote down a very long time ago. For people who were certain the life had gone out of them for good. The question is this: if so much was taken from you, can what was most alive in you actually come back? Stay with that. I am not going to leave you holding it alone. I see you. Not the version you assemble for other people. The one who says fine and means survived. The one underneath. The one who only exhales all the way when the room has finally emptied and no one is left to perform for. There is a way you hold your shoulders now, lifted a fraction, always braced for what lands next. Your chest learned to guard itself. Somewhere back there it decided a full breath was a risk it could not afford. It has taken sips ever since. The mother listening to this has not drawn a truly deep breath since the phone rang that one time. The fear moved into the house. It never fully left. The father draws his air in short pulls at a desk, waiting for the number that decides whether the month holds together. The one who lives alone breathes carefully in a quiet that got too loud, rationing air in a room where no one would notice if it stopped. None of this is hidden from me. I have been in the room the whole time, closer than the tightness in your own throat. And I know the smaller places the air goes shallow too, the ones no one would ever call a crisis. The held breath in the doorway before you step into a room where you are not certain you are wanted, the tightening in your chest when a particular name lights up your phone, the way you go still for a second when the mail arrives, or when someone pauses a beat too long before they speak, or when a person you love goes quiet in a way you have learned to fear. 100 of these a day. You stopped counting them long ago. Bracing became so ordinary, it feels like your personality now instead of your wound. It is not your personality. It is what living under threat does to a body over enough years. It taught you to breathe like something hunted. Hunted, not held. And here is what the shallow living has quietly cost you, underneath all the noise. It is not only that you are tired, though you are tired, it is that joy cannot land in a body that is braced. Good news arrives, and you cannot quite feel it. Some part of you is already scanning for the catch. Love comes near, and you hold it at a careful distance, because you learned that whatever you let all the way in can be taken all the way out. So you have been living at the very edge of your own life, hovering, never fully arriving, because arriving asks for an exhale you did not feel safe to give. That is the real theft. Not only what was taken, it is the way the taking trained you to stop being present to anything good that survived it. Some of you learned to breathe this way very early, long before there was any real danger to justify it. There was a house where you learned to listen for the sound of a car in the driveway, to read the whole mood of the evening before the door even opened. There was a home where warmth came and went without warning, so you learned to stay ready. You kept a little air held back in reserve. in case you suddenly needed to brace. You were a small child, practicing a survival no child should ever have to learn. And your body kept that lesson long after you walked out of that house for the last time. You are not defective for it. You were trained into it by something that was never your fault. But what was trained in can also be gently trained back out. What one house taught your lungs, my nearness can slowly unteach. Until the reflex to brace finally learns it can rest. You came here because something in you caught a promise that everything stolen would be handed back. And a part of you wants me to produce a list. The money, the years, the door that shut, the person who walked out, the season that got carried off while you were only trying to survive it. I am not going to pretend those losses were nothing. They were real. Some of them were theft in the plainest sense. Someone reaching into your life and taking what was never theirs. But hear what I am telling you now. It changes everything about what I have actually come to restore. The most precious thing that was stolen from you was not a thing at all. It was your breath. Just air. It was the easy rise and fall of a chest that is not braced against the next hour. It was the peace of a person who does not sleep with one eye open. It was the deep, unhurried air of someone who trusts that the ground will still be under their feet when they wake. That is what all those years of pressure quietly carried off. One shallow sip at a time. So slowly you never notice the theft happening. And that, before anything on your list, is the first thing I have come to give back. Because if I only handed the things back and left you living the same braced way, you would lose them all over again. All of it. Inside a single season. You would guard the returned money with the same clenched hands. You would keep the restored friendship at the same careful arm's length. Still waiting to lose it. You would move back through the reopened door, still braced for it to slam behind you. A person who cannot exhale cannot receive. The open hand and the open lung are the same posture. That is exactly why I begin there. I am not holding the rest of it back from you out of reluctance. I am making you into someone who can hold a good thing again, without turning it into one more thing to be afraid of losing. So, do one small thing with me before I go any further. Let your eyes go soft. Do not lock them onto anything in particular. Not the screen, not a mark on the wall. Let whatever is in front of you blur a little at its edges. The way a wide field looks when you stop staring across it and simply let it be there. You do not have to focus. You have been focusing for years, scanning the horizon for the next threat. Just for one slow moment, let your gaze rest on nothing at all, and notice how even your eyes have been holding on, how even they have been braced. Let them loosen. Nothing in this moment requires you to be that alert. Now I want to loosen something else that has been tightening your chest without your permission. Long before you ever came to this place, someone handed you a god. A god who stood over your life the way a supervisor stands over a factory floor. Arms folded, watching to see whether you would finally get it right, saying nothing about the effort, noticing only the failure. You learned to read me as pressure, as one more presence in the room you had to satisfy, as the eye that kept the ledger and stayed silent about how hard you were trying. And so, without ever choosing it on purpose, you began holding your breath around me too. You came to me carefully. You prayed in shallow sips, apologizing before you dared to ask, bracing for the disappointment you were sure was already on its way. You treated me like the last person in the world you could exhale in front of. And that, more than any circumstance, is what stole the deep breathing from your faith. Here is the quiet cruelty of that picture. A God with folded arms does not have to do a single thing to harm you. He only has to watch. The watching itself becomes the weight. You have carried an audience in your chest for years, a presence you assumed was always faintly disappointed, and you shaped your whole prayer life around never being caught short in front of it. You gave me the edited version. You brought me the tidy summary and kept the real thing hidden away. The way a person hides a mess before someone important comes to the door. And all that hiding costs air. It costs air to perform. It costs nothing at all to come home. That God was never me. Hear this as plainly as I can say it. The real one is not standing over your life with folded arms. On the very first pages of what I have ever said about you, I did not command the dust to assemble itself. I did not shame it into rising. I did not stand back to see if it could manage on its own. I knelt down into it. I formed it with my own hands. And then I did the most intimate thing there is. I brought my face close to what I had made, and I breathed my own life into it. That is where you came from. Not from pressure, from my breath. You are dust that I chose to fill with my own air. A supervisor does not do that. Only a father does that. Think about how near that is. To breathe life into something, you have to be closer to it than to almost anything else in the world. You cannot breathe your own life into a thing held at arm's length. The very first thing I ever did with you required me to come nearer than the folded arm God could ever bring himself to come. I was never distant and unimpressed. From the beginning, I was close enough to share my own life with a handful of dust and call it my child. That is the truth about the distance you have been feeling. The distance is not mine. It is only the held air between us, and I have come to end it, not to enforce it. And I have not changed my way of coming to you since. My spirit still moves the way the wind moves. You have felt it before. You could not point to where it began or where it was going. Only that something in the room had shifted, and suddenly you could take a full breath again. You cannot schedule that wind. You cannot earn it or trap it, or make it blow harder by being good enough for it. It goes where it wills. And it has willed its way here, into the exact room where you are sitting. Into the tightness you have been carrying around like a second shift you never applied for. Notice how the wind works. It will teach you something about the way I heal. You never actually see the wind itself. You only ever see what it moves. The branch that bends low. The dust lifting off the road. The surface of still water suddenly alive with ripples where a moment before it lay flat. If you had waited to believe in wind until you could see the wind with your eyes, you would have called every field in the world dead your entire life. And that is precisely how you have been reading my work inside you. You keep waiting to see the wind, and so you keep missing the small movements that are the only proof the wind ever gives. The shoulder that dropped an inch, the prayer that came a little easier than the one before it, the stretch of rest you got without checking the locks. Those ripples are not nothing. They are the wind, and you have been calling them coincidence and letting them pass. So let something come loose while I speak. Notice your jaw. Not to correct it, only to feel it. If it has been set hard, clenched around all the words you never got to say and all the bracing you have done in silence, let it come unclenched. Let the teeth part, just barely. Let the hinge of it soften and open a fraction. It is a small thing, almost nothing. But the body believes what the jaw tells it. And for one loosened moment, you are telling it, there is nothing left to grip right now. Nothing here to defend against. You can let go of the guard you have been holding at the very front of your face. Feel how much you held. That is what I mean when I say I have come to give the air back. Not a feeling you have to work up. A loosening you did not have to earn. Now let me take you to a place I once showed a tired man. I want you standing there when I say the sentence I brought you here to hear. Picture a prophet, a long time ago. His people had been carried far from home, stripped of everything that once made them feel alive. They had a phrase they said to one another in the dark of it. Our bones are dried up. Our hope is gone. We are cut off completely. That is not poetry to me. That is the exact language of a person whose air has gone shallow, who has quietly decided the life is not coming back. You know that language. You have said it in your own words. So I set him down in the middle of a wide valley. The whole floor of it was covered in bones. Not fresh, not recent. Dry. Bleached white by long seasons under an open sun. The kind of dry that everyone who walks past agrees is final. And I asked him the same question that has been sitting underneath everything you feel. Son of man, can these bones live? He did not say yes. He was too honest for that. And I loved him for it. He looked at how dry they were and answered, "O Lord God, you know." Which was his careful way of saying, "Not by anything I can see. Only you would know." If your own valley came to mind just now, the dry place you long ago stopped expecting anything from, you can name it where you are in a single word. Leave the word, breathe right there, quietly or out loud, not for anyone else and not to perform, only so the dry place has finally been spoken to instead of buried in silence. Sometimes the first air to return is just the honesty of admitting how dry it got. Notice that I did not argue with him about how dead it looked. I did not tell him the bones were secretly fine. They were not fine. They were dry, and the dryness was real, the same way your losses are real. I will never insult you by pretending otherwise. But dryness has never once been the end of the story when I am the one standing in the valley. And then I told him to do a thing that sounds like foolishness until you understand who I am. I told him to speak to the breath. This is what I said. Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 9. Then he said to me, "Prophesy to the breath, prophesy, Son of man, and say to the breath, Thus says the Lord God, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe on these slain, that they may live." Read it slowly. Come, O wind, breathe on these slain, that they may live. Now notice what I did not say. I did not tell him to command the bones to try harder. I did not tell him to order them to assemble themselves and prove they deserved to stand. I told him to speak to the breath. The trouble in that valley was never that the bones were lazy. The trouble was that the life had left. And the answer was never that they would rebuild themselves out of willpower. The answer was that I would put my own breath back into what had gone still. My breath, not theirs. That is the thing you have been missing underneath all the striving. You have been trying to reassemble your own life, bone to bone, holding it with clenched hands, exhausted from being your own source of air, your own supply of hope, your own wind. And I have been standing in your valley the entire time, not asking you to breathe harder, ready to breathe over you myself. What went dry in you is not too far gone. Dry is not the same as dead to me. Dry is simply where I like to begin. Dry is the place where everyone else has already given up and walked on. And only I am left, still standing there, still asking, can these bones live? Let that reach the part of you that has been ashamed of how little strength you have left. You were never meant to be your own wind. No one was. The exhaustion you feel is not proof that your faith is weak. It is proof that you have been doing the one work that was always mine to do. So set it down. You are allowed to be the valley. You were never asked to be the breath as well. Do not miss a detail in that valley. It is the very shape of how I have been working in you. When the prophet first spoke, there was a great rattling. Bone came to bone, sinew and flesh rose over them, skin covered them. It looked complete. It looked like a whole field of bodies, formed and finished and ready. And still there was no life in them. They had the shape of a body without the wind that makes it a person. Sit with that. You have known that exact condition. You have had whole seasons where everything got rebuilt on the outside, the work restored, the calendar full again. The picture reassembled so neatly that other people told you how well you were doing. And still nothing you could feel from the inside. The structure was never the life. The wind is the life. And I did not stop at the structure and call it finished. I called for the wind. I called it from every direction there is, not from one. As if there were somewhere in all the earth my spirit could not reach. There is no corner of your life so far gone that my wind cannot travel to it. No loss so buried, no dryness so old, no valley so remote that it does not know the way in. It comes from every side at once. No corner left out. I meant to leave the dead place no excuse to stay dead, and you should know how far I was willing to go to hand this life back to you. My own son went down into the driest place there is. On the cross, the breath left his body. They took him down and laid him in the ground, with all the other things the world had counted as finished. 3 days. The valley stayed silent. Every honest person agreed it was over. And then the same wind that first filled the dust filled him again. He rose up out of the one place life does not return from, and he walked into the open air. He did that so the spirit that raised him could reach all the way down into you. What I am offering you is not a pleasant mood. It cost me a grave to give it. And notice where that risen life went first. It tells you everything about the kind of room I am willing to enter. He did not walk out into a palace. He did not appear first before the crowd that had mocked him. The first ordinary thing he did was find frightened friends shut inside a room, breath held behind a bolted door, certain the whole thing was finished, and he breathed on them. He said, "Receive the Spirit," and he handed them, by his own breath, the very thing the dry valley had been waiting on for centuries. Look at where you are as you hear this. A room that feels locked from the inside. A chest braced for the worst. An exhale you have not fully let go of in longer than you can remember. That is exactly the kind of room the risen life has always known how to walk straight into, bolted doors and all. Look back now at the question I asked when we began. If so much was taken from you, can what was most alive in you actually come back? Here is the answer, plainly, the way I promised it. Yes. Not because your loss was small, not because the theft did not happen, but because I am the God who speaks to the breath. The thieves only ever reached what your hands were holding. They never once reached the place where my wind goes in. Always out of their reach. Never on the table they cleared. And what I am restoring first is not the inventory of what you lost. It is the breathing itself, the peace, the ease, the unbraced, unhurried life of a person who has finally remembered that the wind is on their side. So here is something small you can carry into the days in front of you. You do not have to manufacture a single thing. The next time you feel the shallow catching come back, the tight chest, the lifted shoulders, the held air of a body bracing for the next blow. Do not fight it. Do not scold yourself for it. Just let one breath go all the way out. Empty. Slow. All the way to the bottom, past the place you usually stop. And as the next one comes in on its own, without your effort, let it be a small act of trust. The same wind I put into the dust is the wind filling you right now. You may not feel transformed the first time you do it. You might not feel much of anything the 10th time. But somewhere around the 40th quiet breath, when you have stopped waiting for it to feel dramatic, something in you will loosen its grip, and you will realize you are breathing like a person who is held, not because you finally figured out how to relax, because you finally believed the air was a gift and not a thing you had to earn. That is the restoration beginning. It rarely arrives as thunder. It usually arrives as one breath that goes deeper than the last. And you can hand the honesty back to me in that same moment. You do not have to bring me the edited version anymore. When the dry thing rises up in you, the grief you thought you had already finished, the fear you are ashamed still has its grip, you can simply breathe it toward me, not hold it behind your teeth. Say the true thing on the way out. I am tired. I am afraid this will not change. I do not know yet if I can trust you with this one. That is not a failure of faith. That is the first honest breath of a person who has finally stopped performing. And it reaches me faster than any polished prayer you ever rehearsed. The prophet did not pretend the bones looked alive. He told me the plain truth of what he saw. And the plain truth is exactly what the wind blew through. Do not rush any of this. Do not grade yourself on the speed of it. Dry ground does not drink a whole rain at once. It softens first. Only then does it begin to receive. You have been dry for a long time. So let the wind come at the pace it chooses. Stop treating the slowness as a sign that nothing is happening. Your only work in this is to stop holding the door of your chest shut against the very thing you have been asking for. Every breath you finally let go of, all the way to the bottom, is you unbolting that door one more time. You are not required to feel the wind arrive. You are only asked to stop bracing against it. The valley did not raise itself, neither will you. It simply stopped refusing the wind. And watch what begins to happen as the air returns. The people around you have been living with your held breath too, with the tightness you carried into every room, with the short answers, the bracing they could feel, even when you said nothing at all. As you begin to loosen, they will feel it before they can name it. The house grows less guarded. Your voice sheds an edge it wore so long you forgot it was there. This is how restoration spreads. Not first through your circumstances, but through a person who has started living like they are safe, who carries that ease into rooms that had only ever known their fear. What I give back to you, I am also giving, through you, to everyone who has had to live near it. And do not measure the life coming back by whether the whole inventory returns on a schedule you can circle on a calendar. That was never what I promised. Anyone who promises you that is selling you a wage and calling it a miracle. Measure it instead by the air. The bracing is loosening. The dryness is meeting the wind. The chest that forgot how to rest is slowly learning it again. What the thieves carried off, they could not follow into the place where I breathe. Not there. And into that place, right where you are, I am moving now. The bones you gave up on hearing me over are not beyond the wind. The valley you stopped visiting because it hurt to see it dry is exactly where I am standing. And the wind is already moving across the floor of it, bone finding bone, the still place stirring, the air returning to what everyone else called finished. You are not being asked to raise yourself. You are being asked to breathe, and to let the wind do what only the wind has ever been able to do. Amen. Before you go, let me ask you one plain thing. Where in your life did the breathing go shallow? The place you have guarded so long that you forgot air could ever feel easy there. Name it below, in a single word or a single line. I read them, every one. And if a face came to mind while you were listening, someone whose air has gone thin, who has been on guard for years, send this quietly their way. Let them hear that the wind still knows how to find a dry valley,